And hello, everyone. So I am back. As you can see, I was recently offline, completely offline. Was a very interesting trip going down that north rim of the Grand Canyon there, and then 4 days of hiking, and then back up the south rim. So that was an amazing experience, and I highly recommend that. So, but for that reason, I have not posted a video recently. So, I am going to rectify that right now. One of the things that we've talked about that I thought would be good to kind of dig into a little bit in regard to notes and in regard to investment in general is this concept of volatility or uncertainty in payments as being a kind of a mathematical expression of risk. So, when we create our spreadsheet, let's say we're going to create a rental property, we say, okay, I think the taxes will be this. I think the maintenance cost will be this, etc. So we put all of those things into the spreadsheet, and then we calculate what the cash flow will be. But of course, all of those are point estimates, and some of those point estimates can swing very wildly. The whole philosophy or theory around this can be seen on a website, the PMI website, which is the Project Management Institute. I did go through that training program. And there are different ways, as you can see named here, for simulating the kinds of risks that we might encounter. But anyway, blah, 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 blah. We don't need to worry about how we're going to simulate it, whether it's Monte Carlo simulation or whatever. The point is merely this, that there are certain kinds of costs and certain other factors in various real estate investments that have more or less volatility in how they could actually turn out. So let's go back. Let's start here with something that we've all seen before and use that as our baseline for this conversation. So we've all seen this before. Let's say we put a rental property up against a note, and both of them have got a $1,000 a month payment to us. And we all know that for that rental scenario, we're going to have to pay, $100, maybe 10% management. Maybe I've got some vacancy and then I have to do the turnover. In some cases I might have to replace the carpet or whatever. I've got taxes at whatever. I've probably got a pretty good estimate of that in the current year, but what will it be in future years? Insurance, again, same as with tax. Maintenance, the classic 1% rule, 1% of the value of the property when we purchased it, or $1 per square foot, or whatever kinds of methods and well-known rules of thumb you stick in there. It may be, but that maintenance is one that has a lot of variability in reality. So then we have this net income, and we can compare that with the net income on a note, where basically we're only paying $18.50 to our third-party loan service provider, and none of those other costs apply. So now we get to, of course, in the case of the rental property, we might be paying a mortgage as well. I kind of modeled it at, we put 20% down because it was an income-producing property and financed 80% on a 30-year fixed at a nice 3.5% rate, a really good investor rate. And so if that were the case, I'd be paying $359 anyway. It doesn't matter. It's just to get the idea. But in this particular case, we might have a net cash flow per month of $191. Okay, so now back to the topic of volatility. So if I'm going to multiply that $191 by 12 months, it means that I'm bringing in, for my $20,000 cash invested, about $2,292 a year, which you could easily do in your head. That might be around 11%, right, return on investment. But do you see how vulnerable that $2,292 might be to a variety of different shocks that could occur. Here's a website about unbudgeted repair expenses. And, if we go over to that website, it talks about, different things that we might encounter. If we have to suddenly do a foundation repair, if we have electrical issues, and you think about that amount of money that we're getting cash every year and how this would match up against most of these would completely wipe that out. And that's the risk. So that's what a lot of landlords find disenchanting about their investment, is that all of a sudden they can get hit with these big expenses that completely wipe out what they were expecting to make in that particular year, unbudgeted repair expenses. So that's a kind of a risk, that volatility in any given year. Something might really wipe them out for the whole year, or even make them go negative, come out of pocket. So in addition to the risk of expenses, there's this other key risk, which is not getting paid. Imagine, and especially when the government is coming in behind that renter and saying, hey, don't you worry about paying, it's okay. So at this moment, the most recent report that I've seen from Associated Press says that 58% of landlords are owed back rent. So here again, miss a couple months of rent payments, hope to get them ever, and that would wipe out that whole scenario that we were looking at on the previous screen. So that's another risk. Am I going to get paid? When am I going to get paid? Will I get paid at all? But it doesn't end there. So now with the Congress in full press trying to increase our taxes. You can see here the subline, President Biden's proposal makes good on his pledge to raise taxes on investment income for the wealthy. I think people like you and I are who those have in mind as being the wealthy. So let's just take a look at historical tax rates over time. You can see that the tax rates that we're at now are kind of low to average in terms of the total timeline. So there's certainly room for those in power to decide that we should pay more in taxes. And it certainly is the case that they may do so. Look at this. In 1950 and 60, the tax rate on this blue line is the individual income tax rate highest bracket. It got as high as more than 90% of all income. Oh, that is not very funny. So what's being proposed right now is a doubling of taxes on capital gains. So there is some question about whether they're even going to make that retroactive to April of this year, which would be unprecedented. Of course, there's a lot of back and forth in Congress, but definitely for 2022, the intent is that, and they always start by talking about those filthy rich people, and then they kind of work their way down. It's always like that with tax. So right now they're talking about doubling the capital gains rate for this upper echelon of taxpayers. And everybody else, all the rest of us, will get pulled along into that downdraft. So here you can see on the left somebody that I follow a lot, and you've probably heard me talk about before, Eddie Speed. And so I spent some time talking to Eddie about this, and so he's asking this question, if your tax rate doubles, how many more years would you need to keep a property to make that math work? How many years would it have to appreciate to make the same net profit after taxes as simply just selling this year? So this is really a time when a lot of landlords who are already frustrated by unexpected expenses, frustrated by the volatility in the income, the actual what they're collecting, and then worried about taxes are thinking, should I just go ahead and unload that rental property this year? So it is possible to do so. There's a way out, and even irregardless of what happens with the actual capital gains rate, whether it's retroactive or whatever, as Eddie, you can see here pointing out, definitely you can spread any capital gains tax over the next 15 years or whatever, with no interest and no penalties, if you do it with this thing called the installment sale method. So basically, what we're talking about is taking that volatile situation, which is a rental, and turning it into that less volatile situation that we saw on the right-hand side, which is a note, and also mitigating the tax impact at the same time, because it's basically selling the property on an installment sale. See how that works? So here, Eddie, these are the words of Eddie saying that he's spoken with, obviously it was a mastermind group that he was at, and everybody was saying, yeah, that makes sense to do this before the end of this year. So that's one part. But from the tax standpoint, unfortunately, there's still more. And that more is the depreciation tax recapture. So again, this is Eddie, this is a conversation with Eddie. If you claimed a depreciation on something that actually increased in value, of course the IRS is going to come back and say, wait a second there, cowboy. You claimed on your taxes depreciation because you thought that the value of the property was going down, but when you turned around and actually sold it, it went up. So now we want all that money back. And if that depreciation was accelerated, there's no way out. They're going to have to give all that money back in the form of a tax, a depreciation tax recapture. But if all or part of that was long-term depreciation, then that one too can also be spread out as part of a tax installment sale method. So this is the time when I or anyone else like me will stop and say, oh, by the way, I'm not a CPA, I am not a tax advisor, I'm not an attorney. Be sure to check with your own attorney and your own tax advisor, et cetera, which is certainly true, and especially in an environment like now, where everything is kind of a moving target, and even your CPA won't be sure exactly how things will turn out. But still, in broad sense, these are the right questions to ask of such a person, that's for sure. And so the basic scenario, to summarize, that I'm finding resonates a lot with many people that I'm talking to, and is causing me to have quite a pipeline, is someone that owns a rental property. They want to reduce the variability of their net income for all those reasons that we just discussed that cause that variability, and they want to avoid a big tax hit in 2022 and basically just simplify their life. So if that's the situation that, of someone that and you want to reach out to me, we could kick the tires on that together and, maybe help that person out. So I thought that would be nice to kind of unpack that, put all those pieces together, the volatility theory from PMI, married to the way it actually works with rental, married to the tax situation of today. All right, that's it for now, and talk to you later.